Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, One Piece chapter 1065 is out. If you guys haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. But now that you have, let's begin. Okay, there is so much that I need to say. Little overwhelmed over here. I watched Film Red last night, just before I read the chapter, and oh my god, it was so good. I can't stop thinking about it, and I want to talk about it. We're not going to do it in this video, but it's in theaters in the United States. I finally got a chance to watch it and highly recommend. It may actually be the first One Piece movie that I make an exclusive video just sharing what about it I loved and just discussing it in general. But I suppose that as it relates to people who follow the manga, your biggest question is how canon is it? Do I need to watch this for any story reasons? And my answer to this is no, I don't think so. There are definitely things which you can use to create theories about the manga. Like there may be foreshadowing of various kinds, it's worthy of analyzing with respect to the story going forward. But at the same time, people that are saying that it's canon or reveals canon information, such as Luffy's dream, for instance, I personally don't think so. But do know that it is a bigger conversation than just my opinion. Second on the agenda today, my book was released at pretty much immediately after I watched Film Red, then I read the chapter, then I realized that my book had been released. So as always, links in the description for that. You can purchase the ebook and the physical volume depending on where you live. There's still some hiccups in that, which I apologize for, but it's here. So for those of you who have a chance to get a copy and get a chance to read it, let me know what you think. And make sure you leave a review. But yeah, finally being published is surreal. Okay, I needed to get that off my chest. Now, to the actual chapter this week, chapter 1065. And, oh my god, it was just as good. We have truly entered the slobbering phase of One Piece. Because Egghead Island is incredible. As always, if I don't know exactly where to start, let's start at the beginning. So we begin the chapter with Zoro and Brook back at the Thousand Sunny, and they give a justification for why they stayed behind. Basically, this is a government island, so somebody needs to stick around and be vigilant in case they fall into some kind of trap, which became relevant later on in the chapter, obviously. But with the pseudo twist at the end of the chapter where it doesn't appear as if Vegapunk is actually any threat to the Strads, I expect there to be another reason for Brook and Zoro on the Thousand Sunny. Something should happen there. There's a reason they stayed behind, and it might very well be Cypher Pole. But along the same train here, right? Cypher Pole is coming. Zoro's already skeptical, right? They're on a government island of being betrayed. We assume Cypher Pole's gonna get here in time to encounter the Strads or see them or something. What do you think he is going to think? I feel like that might be where this is going. And Vegapunk might need to prove that he is not an enemy. At the same time, people brought this up in comments for the last chapter. It is kind of weird that Zoro seemed to want to have a conversation with one of the Vegapunks. And then we pan to the next chapter and Zoro's actually one of two Straw Hats who's not going with Vegapunk. I take this as just simply Oda sort of waiting to reveal what Zoro's intentions are. There's a ton already going on, so Oda's being patient. Just to reiterate a point that we made a couple weeks ago, my thoughts are the same as they were then. I can't think of any reason that Zoro would have an interest in Vegapunk, aside from, we just came from Wano, the effects of Smile. Since that point, though, we've learned more about Vegapunk, and we still have things to learn, but we do know that there's multiple of them. They are coordinated in some way, we'll get into this in just a second, so it makes us somewhat doubtful, but hypothetically, right, if Vegapunk can split up and go multiple directions, one Vegapunk could potentially go to Wano. That now makes more sense than it did before, with other versions of Vegapunk perhaps going elsewhere. But there's still more that needs to be discussed about Zoro. Caribou is still here, and he does not want to be dropped off an Egghead, literally anywhere else, anywhere but a government island. And Zoro's like, hey man, we're here, have fun. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Caribou's not about that, although I am quite a bit. What you gotta know about Caribou is he knows stuff. It's literally as simple as that. You don't have to overcomplicate it. Caribou knows stuff, and at some point he needs to give this knowledge to someone. So as he doesn't want to be on a government island, and they drop him off on a government island and he has nowhere to go, right? Oda is creating an expectation, or a hypothetical. In this case, it's Caribou gets captured by the government. I'm not going to overreact to this. This is just kind of par for the course with Caribou. Oda's stringing ideas along. He doesn't know, or he doesn't want us to know where he's going with that character. So I think that we have more of this, right? Like, he's going to tease the idea of who is Caribou going to give this information to. Right now it's the government. I don't think it's going to be the government, but we'll see. It's truly a win-win-win-win-win scenario, right? It doesn't matter who Caribou gives the information to, because no matter what, it's going to greatly change the dynamics of the story and lead to awesomeness. I should clarify, so long as Caribou tells somebody. If he doesn't tell anyone, that is the one L among all the W's that you could take. And then we get back to the rest of the Strat crew with Lilith, and oh my god, there's just so much little things that you could pick apart here to discuss. So I'm going to try the best that I can. The Strats are climbing up stairs that are moving, sprouting out of the ground, basically an escalator, I guess. And they ask, what kind of setup is this? How is it powered? And Lilith says, you could say the whole island runs on fire, which is a very curious way of wording that. They go on to say, after all, you can convert its power, fire, I assume, into any kind of energy. And they ask, doesn't that burn through a load of natural resources? And Ebook says, I've always looked into alternative fuels. If only there was such a thing as an eternal flame. This, guys, is what's called a Chekhov's gun. You gotta do something with that. It doesn't matter what it is, you just gotta do something. So it's kind of a theme with most things relating to the story right now. I don't want to treat this as like a standalone idea that becomes something sort of by itself. I want to connect it with other things that Oda's left in the story, see how it might fit in and help him finish the story. So my first thought about the Eternal Flame is, this is potentially a technology that the Ancient Kingdom actually created. Vegapunk suggests in the chapter, I'm not sure we're there yet, but he suggests in the chapter that the stuff that we see here isn't even Ancient Kingdom level, right? He's just working based off the things that he's found, and suggests that the Ancient Kingdom was greater. So I think that they had an Eternal Flame, and I think that's probably gonna matter. Like, it's just a hypothetical example, it doesn't have to fit in here, but for instance, the ancient weapons, or Uranus, which we potentially saw Emu use a couple chapters ago, right, is powered with a power source that is greater than other things. Oda's fiddled with power sources a bit in the series, like Frankie, for instance, uses Cola. Cola doesn't seem like the most ideal power source in the universe, right? So the Eternal Flame is the best one, the most powerful one, and is given to the most powerful inventions, such as ancient weapons. But I don't want to restrict your imagination here, that is just an idea. For instance, if you want to go extremely off the wall, full tinfoil mode, there's an association between fire and the spirit within One Piece. Like, Luffy has fire abilities, his Red Hawk, for instance. Where does this fire come from? Speculations is that it's related to his soul, perhaps a component of Haki, willpower, soul. All of these things create fire. So you have an eternal fire. Sounds a lot like, perhaps an eternal will or inherited will. Suddenly this thing, which sounded more like a concept, is now a physical entity which exists in universe. You have the Eternal Flame, which is an actual thing. This also could be related to the Olympic flame as well. If you watch the Olympics, right, they have this big deal about the fire goes across and then they light the thing. The Olympic flame symbolizes the light of spirit, knowledge, and life. By passing the flame from one person to another in stages, the torch relay expresses the handing down of the symbolic fire from generation to generation. Which sounds familiar, yeah? And then the question becomes, well, how do you create something like this? And the answer to this is magic, or sometimes science, which is kind of like magic. I'm not going to speculate, right? I'm just look inside my mind. Okay, it's a scary place, now we're leaving. All you really need to understand is that when Oda decided to describe the power of Egghead as the power of fire, it's just an unusual choice. There's a reason that he chose that, and it's clearly so that he could get to the concept of eternal fire, to sort of escalate the idea of the power source Vegapunk uses. This is going somewhere in some way, and I look forward to the theories that will spawn for however long this remains a mystery. But I also kind of omitted something here because the conversation continues and Lilith explains that if she had the eternal fire, that she would be able to make her own sun. So with this, obviously you're thinking about Joy Boy, you're thinking about, like the dawn, right? That sort of stuff. It can also just seems really dangerous, right? Creating a sun, that just seems like a bad idea. A potentially world-ending idea. Again, another random thought which popped into my brain here is using the sun, eternal flame, as a power source. Reminds me of nuclear reactors. So in the sun, right, the sun produces energy, which we all use and we're grateful for because life. But it's fusion, right? But a nuclear reactor works like almost in opposite ways, fission. But at the same time, they're kind of comparable or related. So I'm not an expert here. I want that understood ahead of time. However, there are attempts to create nuclear fusion reactors, which you can sort of read about, some concepts behind it. I'm not fully versed. All I know is that this is a potential science that the world is actually looking to develop. So basically, a power source like the eternal flame in the real world, expected to operate at temperatures 10 times hotter than the core of our very own sun. With some of the reveals at the end of this chapter, which we've gone out of order, but obviously you've read the chapter, so you know that the ancient kingdom was more advanced than the present day One Piece world, and even more advanced than Egghead. You've really got to start thinking about the Void Century with more focus on technology, because there has to be a reason why this technology existed, but then didn't. Why did the world go backwards? I actually made a video about this. This was the last video I made, which was incredibly on point, where we discussed some things related to this. But the One Piece world is in a dark age, right? It's technologically declined from the past, and I speculated in the video, right? It's like a thought that can occur that One Piece world is post-apocalyptic. So the thought in my brain were attempts to create the eternal flame, or like a nuclear fusion reactor. Did that end the world, basically? But all of this is mainly from the mindset of technology, right? We're emphasizing the technology aspects of this, but there's devil fruits as well. We know that devil fruits, for instance, in Nell's cover story, which is even more relevant than it was previously, it seemed like the whole moon was powered by his devil fruit, and he used that to power the Arc Maxim, right? So devil fruits as a source of power makes sense. You talk about eternal flame, I think about Ace. Potential ways to make Ace's devil fruit more in-game important wouldn't surprise me. There's theories that, for instance, in Punk Hazard, awakenings, devil fruit Logia awakenings were used to split the island in half magma and half frozen. Almost eternally. It's only been a couple years, but like, if we came back to Punk Hazard 1,000 years from now, is it still burning on one half and frozen on the other? So then if you awakened Ace's fruit, for instance, could you create an eternal flame? Maybe. And certainly it would make a lot of sense for Oda to start hyping up the fruit, because it's just one of those decisions that makes sense. I mean, it's a beloved devil fruit within the story, has a lot of sentimental connections to Luffy himself, and then Oda decided to bring it back, and then decided to have one of the Blackbeard pirates try to steal it. And then even after that, Oda, I think, has devoted a lot of energy in the story recently to Sabo, who possesses the fruit. Again, I don't want to get into the weeds here of trying to explain things that we can't fully comprehend at the second, or it would require a lot of time to do, but that thought occurred as well. Alright, deep breaths. Immediately after this, Lilith slips through a seemingly solid wall. And then the Strats are very confused about this, but they also slip through it. And then, as they try to get back out through the door, it is suddenly actually solid, which is just an incredible technology. Again, the last video that I made was about Laugh Tale, about how it could be hidden using technology. Something like this, I'm just telling you, something like this would be incredible. Honestly, for me, it just makes me think about the whole world in a different way, or if not different, it adds something to think about. For instance, the hole in Eni's lobby. Before we assumed like some sort of magic, devil fruit ability, something like this, but could it be technology related in some way? I mean, Oda's essentially establishing here that technology can do practically anything. The magic of light. But with how detailed the chapter was, it kind of has me looking into things maybe a little bit more than I should be. We flip the page and Nami gets all excited. Let's look for some future treasure. And then Usopp's like, future treasure? What the hell? And she's like flowers made entirely from exquisite antique gems. And Usopp says, that's a weird fantasy. I can't tell if your taste is closer to a little girl or an old hag. I get that this is a joke, right? It's a joke. It's a haha funny, right? Part of One Piece does this. At the same time, it reminds me of Jewelry Bonnie, right? Jewelry Bonnie's just changing everyone's ages, just suddenly, you know? It also has me thinking about, I don't know, like, immortal souls, you know? She's either a very old or very young spirit. And a chapter about the Void Century, or that relates to it in some way, I can't help it. And it also kind of relates to the theme of the chapter, which is, oh, we're in a future island. No, it's actually a past island. Oh, your taste is that of a child or a really old lady. Things are cyclical, basically. Anyway, from here, it appears that Vegapunk set up a battle between the Straw Hats and a new Seraphim, this time a Jinbei model. Like, basically what the Seraphims serve in the story is they're a replacement for the regular Pacifista, because the Pacifista, the original one, has just been power scaled over. I don't know if I said this before, but it's just really clever, just straight up. Just in terms of a design standpoint, to utilize the designs of characters that you already know of, but make them child. It still creates this eerie feeling to me. I feel it even reading this chapter. It's just, it's almost horror-esque for me. But it really does amaze me at how Oda creates the perception that he can essentially do what he wants in the story, and it's almost limitless, right? You know, he continues to drop new things and then build upon them in spectacular ways. So when we first got the Vinsmoke in Whole Cake Island and we learned about cloning, I never thought that we would be here. When we first got the Pacifista and we learned that you could add lasers to it, or when we first learned that you could add double fruits to objects, like, he just combined all of these things into something that is really awesome. But anyway, the Seraphim Jinbei in this chapter appears to be very strong. I don't know how many more gains that the Straw Hats are going to have by the end of the series, so I kind of expect that even to the very last page, the Seraphims are going to remain, at the very least, a major inconvenience, if not a straight up threat. Especially when you can give them Devil Fruit abilities. Like, oh my god, I never realized how perfect a combination it was for Senor Pink's Devil Fruit and just Jinbei in general. I know this is Seraphim Jinbei, not the real one, but oh my god, this is awesome. Now I'm expecting this for literally every Seraphim, which then it's basically Oda being like, look, some of these characters don't actually have Devil Fruits, so what if they did? And then some have Devil Fruits, but it's like, what are some other good combinations? I'm low-key kind of losing my mind about this more than I thought. And really what's most exciting here is that I feel like that Oda can pretty much choose from any Devil Fruit that exists. Look, if Oda wants it to happen, it could happen. It could be as simple as, you know, obviously with Senor Pink he was captured by the world government, but like, look, they could take a hair from Luffy's head and then maybe recreate the Gomu Gomu no Mi, for instance. I'd believe it. Why this works so well, I think, just as it's almost like fan fiction in a sense, like an alternate, you know, universe, is because Oda's included this detail that the Seraphims remember something about the former warlords or person's history, their fighting experience, because Seraphim Jinbei uses Jinbei's techniques or something close to them. So it's like looking at the same thing, a younger version of it plus a Devil Fruit. And with this, I believe that it's confirmed that there is an organic, a human component, a living component to these special Pacifista. I know that that's what we speculated before, but even more confirmation makes me love it all the more. I like this more when it's not just a robot, and that's kind of what Oda led us to believe the Pacifista were previously. They're robots. At the same time, there were some more subtle clues that more was going on there, like there was blood within the Pacifistas. Now, I think we're finding out that it is actually pretty dark. But because there's an organic, there's a human component here, it creates the possibility that life will win, essentially, right? Because they're, you know, I assume that the Seraphim Jinbei is part clone, but is programmed and built in a way which it has no free will. I really hope that at some point in time, they show this individualism more. And Oda's, of course, set that up, at least a little bit. with the Kuma, the Seraphim Kuma, which we saw previously. It's a problem child, right? Or when the shark was introduced at the beginning of this arc and there were certain instincts which couldn't be controlled. Feels like where we're going. And it's possible Oda alluded to this a little bit because there seems to be some hesitancy as this tries to fight Seraphim Jinbei, and I don't think it's just because Seraphim Jinbei looks like Jinbei. It's because it is Jinbei. Like, this line cannot be overlooked. The Seraphim's attack patterns have continued to develop as it grows. That suggests that one's lineage factor, or DNA, really does store some of our recollections and capabilities. These things have memories. I expect payoff of this idea very soon regarding Jewelry Bonnie, right? All of the Kuma pacifistas or the Seraphim Kuma, they recall something about Kuma's real life, and it seems primed, right? Jewelry Bonnie is Kuma's daughter. I should really save this for a standalone theory video, but I'm too excited to share it, so I'm gonna do that. But another thought that this chapter gave me, an incredible thought, quite honestly, is we know that cloning is a thing. We know that the ancient kingdom was more advanced even than Vegapunk. All the technologies that we see in the One Piece world currently have already been invented. But it's not just cloning, right? You can fiddle with lineage factors or the actual DNA to make people even stronger, right? So like Seraphim Jinbei has, it appears, Lunarian DNA within it to make it potentially even stronger than Jinbei is currently. Now, of course, we don't look at Seraphim Jinbei as quite human or quite Fishman. And the main reason is because of the pacifista elements of it, the lack of free will, the suppressed personality. But we know that Sanji is something similar, right? We know that. Sanji and his siblings were designed by Judge Vinsmoke. Maybe not clones, possibly clones, but maybe not. But he's not, he's a designed human with crazy genetic things going on. One of the greatest and least discussed mysteries of One Piece is what makes some of these people just so inhumanly strong. I'm talking basically about first time I ever picked up One Piece and we see Luffy, and of course Luffy has a devil fruit, but just naturally, man, Luffy is incredible. He's just got incredible physical capabilities by nature. I think this way with Zoro as well, much the same as Sanji. They are almost inhuman, and Oda even brings this up from time to time. So let's take a step back here, okay? Let's just assume that Vegapunk designed Sanji almost from scratch. Taking based Vinsmoke DNA, maybe he is legitimately the child of Sora and Judge. And Sora and Judge are for the most part regular humans, and they design their kids to be even stronger, incorporating elements from other living creations. My question is can Sanji have a child? And if Sanji has a child, is it going to have these same advantages that Sanji was given by science? Can Sanji the augmented human have augmented children? Now it's confirmed that this technology existed during the Void Century or before. The ancient kingdom had made these same technological strides, potentially created people very similar to this. And then 1,000 years passes, but these things had children. Do you see where I am going? Essentially what I'm speculating is that Luffy's ancestor from 1,000 years ago, from the Void Century, was something very similar to a Seraphim, or to Sanji. And the reality of this is simply lost over time. Going back to Luffy having the ability to use Red Hawk, he seems to be able to spawn fire, and this has never really been explained. Does Luffy's lineage contain Lunarian DNA? Or think about fishmen for a second, right? We assume that fishmen are natural inhabitants of the One Piece world, somehow created normally, or minks, right? But with this established that you can do crazy things with genetics, and this was true in the past, were fishmen originally an experiment? Let's take this back to inherited will for a second. We know that within lineage factor there exists some recollections and experiences. Do you understand how crazy this would be if you started off with some augmented being that contained lineage factor and DNA from all sorts of sources. It would make you something more than just a human, potentially connecting you to all life. I don't want to go too deep into the rabbit hole as of this second, but I hope that you understand some of the things that I'm suggesting here and how cool they are. But anyway, like I said, I think I said this was a big test for the Seraphim. They're collecting data, trying to continue to improve it. So Frankie uses his radical beam, which is something I was really excited for. I'm so ready to develop the Frankie Vegapunk relationship. It's just so perfect. And at the very least, I want to shout out to my boy, man. I want some recognition. And I want to see if Frankie accomplished anything that might actually impress Vegapunk. We started this arc at the beginning where he's like, they can't even copy the design. Even though we don't know everything that we need to know about Vegapunk, particularly whether he's a good guy or not, I do just want kind of for him to take Frankie under his wing and just, I don't know, man, an attaboy. But we also learn more about Vegapunk and how it works. All the various versions of Vegapunk are very strange, and they appear to have different roles. Like one, for instance, is the designated eater. It eats and it powers up all of them. I have no idea how this works, but creatively it blew my mind. Actually, let's take a stab at this. We know that Vegapunk can incorporate devil fruits into his Seraphims. Now, these various versions of Vegapunk are not Vegapunk, and they seem somewhat similar to Pacifista. Obviously, it's not the same because he's not suppressing their will or their individual personalities, but it's robots probably with organic or human parts to it. So what stops Vegapunk from incorporating devil fruits just the same? Like maybe all the Vegapunks are connected in a very odd way. Like what comes to mind is Bluno's Door fruit, connected by another dimension, such that one Vegapunk can eat and fill up the others. Just a thought. Or like imagine Buggy's fruit. You know, Buggy's fruit allows him to split himself up. Now, imagine splitting Buggy up. You take his brain and his stomach, and then you build an entire robot around that small segment of himself. So the Vegapunk with the stomach eats food and actually fills up the other ones. Also pretty cool, yeah? I'm half expecting some crazy answer like this, mainly because I don't see how the Vegapunks are actually directly physically connected. But once again, there's a million things going on here with Vegapunk. Small details to slowly piece everything together. It's so creative, it blows my mind. York eats, sleeps, and shits, which the joke was on point, by the way. Edison generates ideas, and Pythagoras seems to build them. I'm not sure that I fully understand Atlas quite yet, and Lilith and Shaka seem different. So this was the thing translated differently between the official and some of the scans, but there seems to be a good evil thing going on between Shaka and Lilith. I think in the original, for TCB, they translated Shaka as logic and not good, but from context at this point, it's pretty clear that's the dichotomy. I still find myself intrigued about all of this. I don't feel like we've actually been given an answer as to why the Vegapunks are how they are, how they're separated. Are they aspects of Vegapunk himself, or what? Can he really separate out, like, his good and his evil? And another dynamic, which is just incredibly interesting, is all the Vegapunks don't seem to like all of the other ones. You know, Lilith being evil certainly shouldn't like Shaka, and we see that when Shaka steps in and stops the experiment, Edison calls Shaka a scoundrel. But at the same time, it appears as if they're subservient to him. I'm going to try not to overtalk here because I feel like we're going to learn more about Vegapunk soon. I just want to express how excited I am to learn more. But we finally see Shaka in all of his glory in this chapter. Daft Punk helmet and everything. Put this up near the top of the list of favorite character designs in One Piece. Straight up. And actually, fun personal anecdote here. The first video I had ever edited in my entire life, I did this in school actually because I took a class relating to this, was a Daft Punk video. Basically like a music video, AMV. Technologic, if you're curious. But so Shaka talks to the Strat crew and introduces himself as a Vegapunk as well, and we get another really interesting aside, this time from Usopp. Usopp says, "Oh yeah, did I forget to mention I'm Vegapunk too?" We all know, right, that Usopp's lies become truth. I feel like I need to clarify this every time I bring it up because there is some misinformation about this concept. It's not everything that Usopp says doesn't become exactly as he says it, right? This doesn't mean that Usopp is going to become Vegapunk. However, with Usopp's lies, they become truth in general. Like, for instance, he fought a giant goldfish, right? Well, he didn't fight a goldfish. That was, in fact, Dory and Brogy. So, with this, I just assume that somebody is going to become Vegapunk. Perhaps somebody surprising. I know this seems like a weird thing to say, but whenever Oda makes Usopp lie, I presume that there's some hidden meaning there. No lie, there were already theories, people speculating that the Thousand Sunny becomes Vegapunk. I don't like this theory entirely because I think that the Going Merry has its own personality, its own spirit, so some element of this doesn't sit right with me. At the same time, how cool would it be if the ship was given more ability to express itself? And we've said this before, but although all of these things, Edison, Shaka, Lilith, all claim to be Vegapunk, I don't know how true that is. I don't know if they're aspects of Vegapunk or essentially robots or own beings who just claim to be Vegapunk. So maybe in this way it's more realistic to have a Thousand Sunny or a Sunny version of Vegapunk. I don't know, I felt like bringing this up because with Usopp's lies here, this was already a theory. Another theory that I'm really in love with is Vegapunk continues traveling with the Strads. There's no real reason for me to believe this, I don't think. I just love the thought in general. So maybe this could allude to that in some way, where Vegapunk travels with them, but not in any of his current forms. Or how crazy would it be if Frankie somehow managed to download some aspect of Vegapunk? Also, random intrusive thought, Vegapunk is in fact a virus, a program downloaded by machines become Vegapunk. But from here, Vegapunk reveals that Egghead is not an island of the future, it is an island of the past. And we end the chapter with Luffy, Jinbei, and Jewelry Bonnie stumbling upon some of this old, decayed technology. Technology from the Void Century. Technology from the Ancient Kingdom. This confirmed another theory that we've been speculating on the channel since pretty much Egghead began, which is that Vegapunk is obviously very smart, but he is also a technology thief in a very odd way. He steals tech from the past. We're taking some dubs this week. And you know guys, despite calling this pretty much on the nose, actually some of the ways that I even phrased things were shockingly accurate. This still hit me like a truck. Literal shivers. The implications are so expansive, so numerous, my mind is shattered. I don't even know where to begin. But pretty much the premise of my last theory video was that people don't think enough about how technology played a role in the past and is related to the secrets of the Void Century. The premise of that theory is now how you should be thinking about about everything. Literally in this moment, One Piece evolves from almost pure fantasy to potentially straight up sci-fi. You know, I doubt that this is entirely true, but it could be true. The world of One Piece is literally Earth. The world has been terraformed in crazy scientific ways. Like, if you went back 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 years in the past, are you looking at our present day society? It is technically possible. Devil fruits are a technology. The people who can do strange things within the world is a result of technology. I really don't think that discussion about One Piece theories in general will ever be quite the same. The game has truly been changed in a moment. I know right now it may not sound like I love this, but you couldn't be any more wrong. Sometimes One Piece drops things that I feel overwhelmed, like shocked, and I feel that right now. Guys, there is some potential that in the next chapter we get some huge lore dumps about the Ancient Kingdom and the Void Century. I don't expect anything conclusive, anything in its entirety, but even tiny details. I have oh my god, I've waited for so long, and it could be true. But like I said, I think at the beginning of this video, the biggest question out of all of this, or the most direct question that you should be asking is, there was technological advancements during the Void Century, what happened to them? Why was that covered up? And I do think that it could be related to some sort of apocalyptic event. Again, I still want to talk about Ragnarok in regards to One Piece, but you gotta think that something crazy happened during the Void Century which justifies humanity going backwards. And I think here we have a more firm answer as to why the world government intends on assassinating Vegapunk. I mean, holy shit, he knows about the ancient kingdom. If you want my more convoluted answer as to what's going on here, right, the technology was erased for a reason. There was some reason that they did this. And then there was some reason why they scaled it back a little bit. They allowed Vegapunk to invent stuff, and they're utilizing that technology. So it seems like the world government is combating with the present forces within the world. They need enough technology. They need enough strength to fight against dangerous pirates. But they also don't want to go too far. It seems like another thing that they're trying to balance. And finally, they've reached a tipping point. They got from Vegapunk what they wanted. He served his role, and now he will be extinguished. So don't mind me here, I just can't breathe, okay? Gonna sit on this one for ever, until the end of One Piece probably. But yeah guys, obviously, let me know what you think about this. Share your thoughts. Remember to like, subscribe, click the bell to be notified, join the squad. And as always guys, have a wonderful day.